What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm gonna keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night, for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go!
Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You're watching 40 Days, 40 Nights. Your boy EJ Stewart, where I do 2 live stream shows per day. 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening. Did our earlier one at 8 a.m. Still have to post that one, so that's not on our podcast network, but it is on our YouTube channel where we're currently streaming live. So shout out to the folks streaming live, watching us on YouTube. Also currently streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. Shout out to the folks watching us on X. And streaming live now on Instagram Live. Action EJs, where you'll find me on Instagram Live. We had day 32 earlier. We now conclude with night 32. And tomorrow we get to hump day. And we get to the 7-day countdown towards the end of 40 Days and 40 Nights. We got a lot to talk about. Plenty of NFL stuff, man. This is going to start to rev up in this last week and a half of 40 Days and 40 Nights because the NFL Combine is getting off and running. And we're getting plenty of commentary from decision makers around the NFL. So we'll hear from Aaron Glenn and Darren Mucci, the head coach and general manager of the New York Jets, about the future of the quarterback position, plus the future of the coaching staff, where Aaron Glenn's going to be moving over and coaching defense. He talks about why he made that decision and why people need to get off Woody Johnson's back when it comes to the decision that they made to make him the play caller and not bring in an experienced defensive coordinator. So we'll hear about the Jets and how they plan to approach this offseason. We'll also hear from Andrew Berry, the general manager of the Cleveland Browns. He spoke about their quarterback situation and what will, at this point in time, be an open QB competition that will include Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel. So we'll talk about that and hear from Andrew Berry a little bit later in the show. We'll also hear from Nick Caserio, who's the general manager of the Houston Texans. Is C.J. Stroud on the trade deadline? On the trade block? According to Caserio, hell no. He called those rumors moronic. You'll hear those comments later on in the show. So C.J. Stroud will not be getting traded by the Houston Texans. Should the Texans still feel good about their QB? Maybe it's another question that we can answer. And finally, I mentioned earlier in the show, AJ Styles is going to the WB Hall of Fame. That was announced during Raw in Atlanta last night, which seems like a big moment, special moment, and one that he seemed to be surprised by. But what happened in Raw recap after the show, which I'm not sure if it was taped after the show or taped before the show. I kind of wonder if it was taped before the show. Maybe he would have liked that he did not say these words. But he did some social media video for the WWE in which he was asked about why he decided to end his career at the Royal Rumble and not at the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania. In his words, WrestleMania has lacked its luster in recent years. So a little bit of an awkward moment there that he's about to go to WrestleMania to get inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame during WrestleMania week. And here he's saying that's an event that's lost its luster. So we'll break that down a little bit later as well. So a lot to do here. 40 days, 40 nights with your boy EJ Stewart, streaming live again in multiple spots. I see you got one comment already. Shout out to the folks watching me on Instagram Live. We got Harvey Hydro saying, miss you guys in the AM. Maggie and Pearl. Oh, man, Harvey, miss you too, man. Thank you for that. Really appreciate those kind words. I spoke to Perloff a little bit today. Yep, had an actual phone call with my good friend Andrew Perloff about some mostly stuff just regarding just some stuff he was asking me about things. Nothing necessarily show related, but it was good to hear from him. You guys have heard from them on this show. You guys have heard from them on their own social media platforms regarding what they hope to do for the future. And again, you know, when that announcement comes, hopefully it will come soon and you'll hear from them. But it's good to hear from my guy today. He's, of course, made an appearance on 40 Days and 40 Nights previously. Right before I went live today, I was thinking, man, I do got to reach out to the team. Because I think I want to do a full show with them together. Manny, Bogish, Maggie, and Perloff. All of them together. And I guess the only thing I'm afraid of is my computer blowing up. Like, part of the reason I was late tonight was, again, issues with my hard drive not being connected. And thank goodness it was nothing crazy because it was able to quickly get us back up. But part of me is like, can my computer survive 4 guests from all different locations? I had no idea. To be honest, I don't know if it can or cannot. We'll maybe find out though. Maybe we should test fate and try it. But I love the crew. The crew is a special team, and we've been a special team. And it was great to talk to Perloff today. And shout out to you, Harvey. Thank you for being a listener and of Maggie and Perloff. We greatly appreciate you. The whole team appreciates you, man. This is gonna be fun, man. We got a lot to talk about. 40 days, 40 nights. It was good to hear from my guy Perloff.
You suck, Bogus.
Gives me an excuse to play some of these drops.
EJ's a nerd.
I gotta play more of these. I keep forgetting to play a lot of these. I have a million of them.
It's gonna be the dad bod gods. Bam! You and dunks in your face.
Shout out to my guy Perloff. Great hearing from him today. We got a lot to do today. Let's go with the Cleveland Browns. I actually want to start there. So in Cleveland, you're gonna have a quarterback competition officially. It's gonna have multiple people in it. It's gonna include Deshaun Watson. It's gonna include Shedeur Sanders, and it's gonna include Dillon Gabriel. So this is a team that is not in a position to draft a quarterback from where they are currently in the draft. It is not a draft that is deep at the quarterback position, and based on where they are, unless they were going to be a team that was super, super high on someone like Ty Simpson, it was unlikely they were going to be a team that was going to draft a quarterback. So here we are now with them coming into this current season. No quarterback plan as of right now, other than deciding to say, hey, let's go and let's just simply bring in a full quarterback competition, let all these guys play it out. Here's Andrew Berry explaining at the Combine today that the team is not committed to any quarterback at this point in time.
We don't have to make that decision anytime soon. I think any player that we have in that room, we would expect to compete to earn a role. Those two would be no different.
So those two he's talking about right there are Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson, because those obviously are the big name guys, the big headline generators on the Cleveland Browns right now. Shedeur Sanders, of course, is a lightning rod for all things with his personality, with all the people that he brings, with all the fans that he has brought in, right? And what has been some exciting play from him at times. He did show flashes at times last year, though it was a very up and down year. By the way, this is probably a poor decision, but I decided to let Lita hang out here in the crib. She typically does not hang out in the bedroom when I do my live stream, but she's hanging out right now. Lita, you want to calm down? Hey, Lita, relax. No one's out there. Oh, she'll chill. She's taking her guard duty dogs very seriously. If I have to pause, I may pause and open the door for her. But no, on Shedeur Sanders, like, there's been a lot of question marks about like what is the Browns' future moving forward. Shedeur is a big name. I think that a lot of fans wanted to see him play. They got to see him play. I don't think it was all that impressive. But then what's become the Shedeur Sanders saga has been, well, maybe he wasn't given the right opportunities and the coaching staff was sabotaging him. And then, so it makes even evaluating him very complicated when it should be something very straightforward. Then you have Deshaun Watson, a guy that the owner of the team himself said, Jimmy Haslam, that I made a mistake. We screwed that up. And apparently he's still in the picture. He's somebody that may actually end up being the Browns quarterback this upcoming year, because when you look at their situation, the veterans out there aren't super appealing for the Browns, I would think, right? I mean, you're talking about Tua Tagovailoa, maybe Kyler Murray, maybe Kirk Cousins, who we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. There are some lower options like a Tanner McKee who may be on the trade block, a Davis Mills who may be available. Like, these are guys that aren't going to excite people. Malik Willis, I don't. It's going to be hard to make a play for those kind of quarterbacks, guys who you don't have to pay a ton, but you have to give them some money, more than you paid the $2 million you gave to Joe Flacco last year. And you currently have $50 million tied to Deshaun Watson. Like, that money is not going away. It's a fully guaranteed contract. So are the Browns in a position to bring in another quarterback who's making bread when you have a guy that's on your roster that is healthy and able-bodied? It doesn't really make sense. So I think they're playing this straight. I think that you will see Watson be a part of this quarterback situation. And I would suspect that Deshaun Watson is the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, which I could not fathom after last season, given how things ended, the torn Achilles, the poor play, just everything that went down. I just assumed, well, his career with the Browns is over. And Jimmy Haslam all but said that. But the NFL is a weird place. And it's a never say die place. It's a never say never place. And here we are now, where the Browns essentially did say never. They pretty much said that we were done with Deshaun Watson. But you have two second-year quarterbacks. Neither one was all that impressive in their short time getting the start. So you can't hand those guys a job when you got a $45-50 million quarterback sitting in your QB room. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all. Lita's really freaking out. Let's take a second to drop her off. But no, I mean it doesn't make sense at all. So I would expect the Browns in this situation to go with Deshaun Watson. At the very least, you have to give him a chance to compete, because otherwise that's money that's a sunk cost, which it already has become a sunk cost. But there's no point having him around, not actually giving him an opportunity to perform and play for you if he actually is able-bodied, because maybe you actually can move him or trade him if somebody says, ooh, he looks kind of good. Let's see what we got there. So it makes all the sense in the world, actually, for the Browns, as sick as it is, because he's a sick dude. Like, I don't have love for Deshaun Watson in terms of the off-the-field stuff. That's just my opinion of what I believe he was accused of and what I believe he did. So I'm not a fan of him, but it's just the reality of the sport and the reality of the game that it makes sense for him to be a part of this equation at this point in time. So Andrew Berry, speaking about, let's actually go to Deshaun Watson real quick before I go back to talking about the stuff with Shedeur Sanders. Here's Andrew Berry talking about how he was asked, is Deshaun Watson going to be in a position where he's going to be happy being in a quarterback competition? Here he is saying that he actually would expect Deshaun, like all players, to embrace competition with the Browns.
I think any player on our roster we would want to compete. Like, we believe in competition at every spot. That's no different than quarterback. Deshaun's been working really hard. He's been working his tail off, and like I said, we're excited to get going in April with all of our players across the roster, because competition is something that we really believe in.
Yeah, I mean, there's no choice but to have a QB competition. Like, that's like the reality is, if you have this team, if you're not going to cut Deshaun Watson and just eat the money, and he's going to be on the roster, you also can't have him on the roster and say you're the third string quarterback when there are two guys ahead of him that haven't done 10% of what he's accomplished in his career, as bad as he's looked with the Cleveland Browns. So he has to be in the competition. And I think Deshaun Watson is not in a position in his career, quite frankly, where he can make demands saying, like, hey, send me here, send me there, because I've shown that I can perform at a high level. I don't think anybody's touching this guy. Nobody's touching that money. There's no reason for him to give up that money. I don't think he's going to say, hey, I'll give away some guaranteed money and take a pay cut in order to leave Cleveland so I can play somewhere else. There's a lot of hurdles that come with Deshaun Watson having to have an opportunity to start anywhere else. So it only makes sense for him as well to simply try to make it work with the Cleveland Browns. And it seems like this is, I mentioned a couple earlier when I talked about A.J. Brown and the Eagles, where they were like the high school couple that should have broke up after high school, but somehow they're still together, and you don't know why. It's like you were prom queen and prom king. You were annoying in high school, but you made it work. Now you've done everything you can do. Now you're just pissing each other off. Why is this continuing in college? You guys should have broke up in high school, or at the end of high school at the very least. And that's how I feel about the Cleveland, the Philadelphia Eagles and A.J. Brown. I feel like the Watson-Brown situation is totally different, but it's similar to a couple of relationships. This is like two people that are legally married but haven't really been together in any legitimate way, but the person still lives in the house. They're not moving out. You still have kids, and you're like, listen, we're just gonna live together and cohabitate this place until we figure out what makes sense for us in the future. So it doesn't make sense for the Browns to get rid of him. It doesn't make sense for him to want to leave. But neither one of them are in a position of this being probably a highly successful situation. But these are the cards that they're dealt. Speaking of Shedeur Sanders, let's go back to him. Andrew Berry was asked about what they want to see from Shedeur Sanders, and here's what he had to say.
I think the biggest thing that we want to see from Shedeur is just continued growth. I think he grew a lot from start 1 to start 7. I think certainly, playing more efficiently, playing more efficiently, not putting the ball in harm's way as much, would be important. While maintaining the ability to produce out of structure and generate explosive plays. You're not going to see all of that in the upcoming months because we're not on the field. So the biggest thing that he can do is learn the new offense, get in with the coaching staff once our offseason program starts, continue to work on his body physically, and then make strides when we actually get on the grass.
I'm very curious what a QB Shedeur Sanders looks like in year 2. Like, because year 1, there was just so much noise. So much of the outside noise of what happened from first of all, it was the draft process that had a lot of noise. Then the post-draft process, because of the slide that came with all this noise. He goes to a team where he's a 5th-round pick, and he's the 4th string, but he's the guy that's on the team that I think most outside observers think has the highest potential, but he has this outsized fan base and attention because of his last name, because of his celebrity. So all these things, and then you have by the way, a head coach that's in a lame duck situation. He then eventually got fired. All this creating a weird environment, including the fact that he, in his same rookie class, there was a quarterback on this team that was drafted 2 rounds ahead of him. It was just bizarre. I kind of am curious if he is able to perform at a higher level with a year of experience and so much of the circus atmosphere around him maybe die down just a little bit, not a ton. I think it's one of those things where the circus is going to be around this guy as long as he's playing. He seems to embrace it. He seems to kind of like it and almost maybe thrive in it. There's some guys that are like that. They thrive in excitement, thrive in hype in those situations. He seems to be kind of like that guy. So I don't think he's going to try to tamp it down in any way or try to avoid it or run from it. It's going to be there. But I think we're no longer now in a situation where Dillon Gabriel comes in with more of a stance on the team than he does, because they both played, and Dillon Gabriel lost his spot because of performance. He lost his spot to Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders played the rest of the way. Dillon Gabriel could not get his spot back last season. So I think the whole 3rd round, 5th round pick goes out the window. Now he's not a rookie, so you can not worry about the fact that he's a rookie. You hope that he's learned a lot. And here he is, and it's like best man wins, QB competition. You, Dillon Gabriel, and randomly Deshaun Watson coming off an Achilles tear. Like, who wins this? The Browns are in a situation. This is what makes the Browns thing interesting, because if you want to ensure that you are in the position to potentially draft someone like a Arch Manning next year, which we know Jimmy Haslam would be interested in that, I would assume you want to play the young guys before you put Deshaun Watson out there. But I just don't know if you can brazenly tank in that way, when I think most people would assume that Deshaun Watson is the quarterback best equipped to help the Browns win next season, simply because he's a veteran and he's done it before. But that becomes a little bit of a wrinkle. I do wonder what happens. Do they play games with this where they say, oh, well, we want to get a top quarterback next year, and particularly we want Arch Manning? We'll play around and play not the best guy on the team and get the fans what they want. They want Shedeur Sanders. They love him so much. Let's go out there and let him play and see how he does. And if he fails, he fails. But it's okay, because at the end of the day, if we lose a lot of games, that means we ensure our opportunity to draft Arch Manning, which comes, again, with the same kind of hoopla that Shedeur Sanders has, but they think with better physical traits and more of a chance to be a star player in the NFL than Shedeur Sanders does. That's another wrinkle to this that I think is interesting. But I tend to think that might be too far a pull, and in terms of trying to keep a locker room together, to come in and say, hey, we're going to go with the quarterback who had an 18 QB rating last year. I think they're going to say, hey, there's a sitting former Pro Bowler who has had injuries and all different kinds of crazy issues. But at this point, he's trying to save his career. I think those guys on the team definitely want to see Watson play, is what I would think. That's what I would think. But we'll have to see. It's going to be, for a team that is so terrible, they do draw a lot of attention. The Browns are going to have a lot more attention on them this year, and with the announcement that there's going to be a QB competition with Watson, Sanders, and Gabriel, a competition that sucked up a ton of oxygen last year, because Deshaun Watson now enters this mix, I expect this to be another highly publicized quarterback competition happening in Cleveland. Let's move over now to New York. Let's talk about the Jets. So the Jets announced that they plan to keep Breece Hall. They have multiple ways to do that. How? They're not quite sure yet, but the plan is to keep him and have him be a member of the Jets next season. Breece Hall is going to be a free agent. They, of course, can sign him to a long-term deal. They also can franchise tag him. They also can give him the transition tag, in which they can tag him until a certain amount of money. Another team can then give an offer, and they can then match that offer if they want to do that. It's almost kind of like restricted free agency in like other sports. So that is where the Jets stand right now. Franchise tag for Breece Hall will be $14 million. Here was General Manager Darren Muji saying, again, Breece Hall will be tagged or signed long-term, one or the other.
Yeah, the tags are an option. Ideally, we'd find a way to get a deal done and keep Breece around. I think I've said that for the last year since I've got here. Breece is a good player. Want to find a way to keep him around. We've been going through that process and are still doing so. And, we have a week to find out, if we can't get to an agreement, which way we'll go with that tag.
Were you there? You will tag him?
Yeah, we'll find a way to keep Breece here. we can't get a deal done.
Yeah, so that part there that I had to try to raise the audio so you could hear, that was a question. That was a reporter asking a good follow-up question, because Muji kind of dances around that the tags are, quote, an option, but we want to keep them long-term. But when you say tags an option, you're like, all right, does that mean you're going to use the tags? Like, what do you actually mean by that? So that was a reporter clarifying. So you're saying you're going to use the tag if you can't sign him to a long-term deal. And Muji says, yes, we're going to use the tags if we can. He's going to be here. So Breece Hall is going to be on the Jets roster. How he feels about a franchise tag will be something we'll have to figure out, right? Like, will he hold out? Will he demand a trade? Because we have seen Breece Hall appear to be someone who hasn't been in love with playing for the New York Jets. He had all those passive-aggressive tweets and emojis during this terrible Jets season that they had, and he seemed to, when he was not moved at the trade deadline with all of his other Jet friends like Sauce Gardner and Quinn Williams, he seemed to be perturbed by that, by what he was posting on social media. Now, when then he was asked about it, he kept saying, I didn't request no trade, I didn't demand no trade, you guys are making something out of nothing, but his social media actions said another entirely different thing. So I would have a question. Let's see what happens with a long-term deal, but if he doesn't sign a long-term deal and you decide to tag him, what does that look like in terms of, will he be happy with that? Will he demand a trade? Will that become another whole situation? So Darren was asked whether or not he actually thinks Breece Hall wants to be a Jet. He says yes.
I do get the sense that Breece wants to be here. We've had good conversations throughout the season, after the season, so just finding a way to do that.
So he seems very confident that Breece Hall is going to be a Jet. This seemed to be Jets trying to kind of squash any kind of thoughts or ideas that they're interested in opening themselves up back into the Breece Hall trade market. It seemed like they might have been open to that again around the trade deadline when they started selling off pieces, and I think for the right price, maybe they would have traded Breece Hall. I think they got a good idea of what the market was, and they didn't like it. Seemed like they wanted at least a third, and they weren't getting a third. So Breece ran for 1,000 yards last year. Breece is obviously a good player, and I kind of like the concept that Muji's talking about, where at the end of the day, like, good players are hard to find. What's the point of trading Breece Hall for a third-round pick, which is essentially like a shot in the dark? You're just praying that the guy becomes a good player. And I know this is a different regime, and they're going to hope that they're not going to blow picks. But we've seen the Jets and their draft history, and it's been basically awful. So what are the chances you're going to get a player as good as Breece Hall, even at his, I don't want to say advanced age, but he's been in the league now 4 years. What is the chance you're going to get a guy as good as him with a third-round pick? And is it worth just simply cutting up the money when he's not, running backs don't make that much? Again, they're perfectly fine with paying him top of the line in terms of an annual salary and a franchise tag to keep him on the team. When the Jets have all this cap room, they're in a position of strength. There's no reason to move on here. They already have other running backs on the team as well. They have Braylon Allen. So they have other guys, too, on this squad that they can really pair with Breece, and you can put together a true 1-2 tandem that I think they wanted to show off last year. And I think there were moments where it seemed like they had something cooking, and then they just couldn't consistently, obviously, keep definitely Braylon Allen on the field. He broke his leg, so he was done for the year. But they couldn't really get that going once Braylon Allen went out, and that would have been kind of the thunder to his lightning. But with those guys both healthy, there is definitely a potential for them to be awesome. Like, if they can keep those guys healthy. The offensive line improved. Those guys are a good running back tandem. I think Breece Hall still has some good years left. I was telling Maggie this I remember a couple of months ago, like, watching the Jets, as sad as it was during the end of the season, like when they got blown out by the Patriots, I believe that was one of the games where Breece Hall had one of these super long runs. It was either them or the Bills. I forgot which team exactly. Breece gets a lot of these. But Breece, when he hits the open field and he hits those Jets, he is still, to me, one of my favorite guys to watch run in the open field. I mean, he is just flying. And again, the Jets look at this, and this is not a great running back draft either. They're like, where are we going to find this kind of talent? It doesn't make sense to let him go. If we're actually going to try to not just completely tank and completely be a scrub team, we want to show some improvement. It's going to help whoever the quarterback is here this year to have someone like Breece Hall in the backfield. So speaking of the quarterback position, that's an important part of this too. What happens with that? Because Justin Fields was signed to a 2-year deal, and he was so bad in his first year that he got benched and couldn't get his job back. So will he still be on the team? Darren Muji says, well, he's on the team for now.
Yeah, Justin's on the roster, and just like every other position, we're going to evaluate the quarterback position through every landscape, whether that's trade, on the street, free agency, to see what we can add to the team. But Justin's under contract, Laddie's under contract. We have no, trigger date with Justin's contract, so he's part of the Jets.
So more on this, because he was asked, not just at the press conference, also this is from SNY. He was asked, like, when you think about where you are with Justin Fields and where you are at the quarterback position, how will you determine what that QB room looks like? He says a lot of that will depend on the conversations he is currently having and will continue to have with new offensive coordinator Frank Reich.
Yeah, I think it's different every year. Every situation, every staff's different, right? And we're having those ongoing conversations right now as I get to know Frank and Billy Musgrave, and as we go through this off season and the options that may or may not be there via trade, on the street, or free agency. So those are ongoing, but I'm really looking forward to it and excited about the dialogue we have had.
So it seems like there's a good chance Justin Fields is going to be like the backup quarterback or be in some kind of fake QB competition. Like I think he'll be around. His contract was kind of slated for him to be around, and I'll be honest. Like, and again, I was someone who will say I was dead wrong. I liked the Fields contract. I thought it was a good pickup. I thought there was a chance he had a high potential. I said, worst comes to worst, if he was so bad, I think that you could probably still run him back for another year if he had to, or he could be a backup to a young quarterback that you drafted. And then the draft, the QBs went how they went in terms of the college season, so there are no QBs drafted in the first round. And then he played so poorly, he lost his job. So they're kind of in this weird no man's land where it's like, well, maybe it would have been fine keeping him around to back up if we had some young guy here that was going to be the starter that he could maybe start for a couple games and then he could take their spot, or they could take his spot rather. Or he would have played well, he would have kept his job. He didn't do either. He was so bad that he's one of those guys where I don't know how you keep him around, but you kind of have no choice. Otherwise, again, the money just goes away. You might as well keep him on the roster. I don't think he's good, but I would kind of be curious to see, hey, like another OC, maybe Frank Reich gets something out of him that these other guys couldn't get out of him. Again, not as the starter, but as the backup. It does lead to an important question of what's going to happen with the Jets in the backup situation, which will lead us to a conversation about Kirk Cousins in a couple of minutes. But from what I saw just before I got on this show, it seems like when it comes to quarterbacks the Jets will be looking at, you might not be looking at your Kirk Cousins types or even your Derek Carr types. Who knows if Derek Carr actually wants to be here, because he seemed to allude to the fact that if he's going to come out of retirement, it's going to be to play for a winner. Jets certainly aren't that. So that seems to suggest that's not going to happen. But that if the Jets are going to be invested in getting a QB for this upcoming season, look to them to potentially look for someone like a Tanner McKee, or for someone to look at someone like a Davis Mills. Those are the names that are apparently being thrown out there as guys that it would be expected. This is according to Tony Pauline. It would be expected that those would be the guys that would be on Darren Muji's radar. I can actually read this quote here. After last year's failure at quarterback, the Jets are open again in the market for a starting signal caller to compete with or replace Justin Fields. Much of the narrative outside the league has centered around the team potentially making a trade for Kyler Murray. Yet people in the league tell me if general manager Darren Muji gets his way, the Jets will look to bring in a less expensive signal caller. Two names entering the conversation, Tanner McKee and Davis Mills. I find some of that wording very interesting from Tony Pauline. That being, if Darren Muji gets his way, he's a general manager. Why would he not get his way? I don't think they're putting stuff like that written in there by mistake or by accident. I read between the lines of everything. That's one of the things you'll know about me is I read between the lines of everything. And I see little things and I go, well, they're not written by accident. A lot of people, I think they would actually maybe have a better understanding, a better feel for things that happen in sports had they kind of had my eyes on some of this stuff. But I read, if Darren Muji gets his way, people around the league are talking about Kyler Murray, but if he gets his way, it's going to be these two other guys. Why would he not get his way? I think we all know why. It's because of Woody Johnson. And maybe Woody Johnson will be the kind of guy who may step in and say, I don't want to get out of here with your Tanner McKee, Davis Mills nonsense. We need to get a real star in here, a former number one pick. Kyler Murray is available. Doesn't matter if he doesn't fit with Reich's offense. Doesn't matter that he likes video games more than football. Doesn't matter that the team had to beg him to read the playbook. This is the guy we need to bring in. That, I think, is what would be the fear for the Jets and for Jets fans if it is indeed Muji who thinks that McKee or Davis Mills would be a better option, and instead they make some trade to bring in Kyler Murray and his awful contract and bring that here. The Jets, if they do that, that would feel a lot like the New York Knicks of the mid-2000s. This would feel very much Isaiah Thomas, Scott Layden kind of movements where you're like bringing in guys who are well past their prime or well past their usefulness, but still getting paid like they're useful to come in and try to see if they could revive their career with the Knicks. I saw that happen over and over and over and over and over again with so many different guys. Bringing in Kyler Murray seemingly would fit right into that build. Oh, let's bring in another high-priced guy who's well overpaid and hasn't lived up to his contract, but maybe he'll figure it out here in this dumpster fire. Sure, that makes sense. I don't want to see that. I'd much them prefer them just take a flyer on a older guy or one of these younger guys. Like to me, like I'd rather them take a flyer on an older guy like I don't even love Kirk Cousins. I don't love that option, but I'd rather them do that than this. I'd rather them take a flyer on a guy like a Malik Willis, see what they got for a year, and if they don't get it done, then you just draft a quarterback and that guy's on the roster and you figure it out from there. But I'd rather them do that than go after the Kyler Murray, the Tua Tagovailoa or something like that. I don't want that. I just feel like something tells me that that's what's going to happen with this team, because that's what the Jets typically do. They always go for the splashy name. They go for the star because that's what Woody Johnson wants. He wants the headlines. He wants the attention. And speaking of Woody Johnson, let's talk about Aaron Glenn, who also spoke during this press conference. So he actually came out and he wanted to defend Woody Johnson. He said that in many ways there are narratives being pushed about Woody that he thinks are unfair and that need to get cleared up.
And I think there's a narrative about this team. I think there's a narrative about me, about our general manager, and about Woody that really needs to change. And here's how Woody operates in this situation. I have an opportunity to go in there and speak with him about my vision on how I see the coaching staff, my vision on how I see the team. And Woody's answer is always, what can I do to help you? What can I do to help you be successful? And I feel fortunate to be in a position to have an owner that operates that way.
Glenn also says that he feels very lucky that he has Woody Johnson as the Jets owner.
I would really like that narrative to change, that he's involved. He's trying to force me or Moose to do certain things. Man, he's there to support. He's always been there to support. And the only thing I can speak for is myself and my relationship with him. And it's been outstanding. So I guess to answer your question, he is not pushing me to pick coaches. He is not pushing me to operate this team a certain way. The only thing he's doing is supporting it. And I feel fortunate to have an owner like that.
So in many ways, those are obviously responses to the reports that originally came from Sean Morash of WFAN, who mentioned how he was reporting that Darren Muji was telling people he was unhappy, and he had said that the reason why Wink Martindale was down the line with coming up with a deal to become Jets defensive coordinator, and then it seemed to blow up to the last second, was because Woody Johnson told Aaron Glenn that instead of you hiring a defensive coordinator, I'm paying you $5 million, whatever the number was. I forgot what it was. Maybe it was 10, I forgot. Paying you X amount of millions of dollars for you to be a defensive coach. You should coach a defense. That is the reporting that came out. So I think when it comes to these quote-unquote narratives that Aaron Glenn wants to quelch, that is what he's referring to, and those are the questions he is answering. Obviously, I've told you, I know Sean Morash. Obviously, we're colleagues. I'm very cool with Sean Morash. I would definitely consider him a friend. He stands by his report. So and he said he's heard even more things about the Jets since he came out with his report, because people were saying, "Oh, you heard that? Well, guess what I got to tell you." So he says he's hearing even more things about the chaos that goes on with the Jets at this point in time. I'll be honest, a lot of this sounded like media spin to me. This press conference for Aaron Glenn was interesting because it kind of went back to like, oh yeah, I remember why I like this guy. Like I remember why I was excited about him and why I was hopeful that he would be the right coach for the Jets. Because a lot of that sounds good. Like it sounds like, oh, you guys got it all wrong. Woody only wants to support me, and he sees me and says, I have this vision for this team, how to get them to be a winner. He says, what can I do to help? And he's convincing when he says it. He really is. Aaron Glenn is a guy who I think is, in this setting, very easy to like. When he's not doing the Bill Parcells cosplay, is what you seem to kind of put aside today, thank God. He's very easy to like. I don't know why he went to that I'm this mean, tough guy thing, when that wasn't how he approached this when he first got the job. Remember last year, first he showed up in the press conference, it was very positive, very, much like, very much a winning the press conference kind of press conference. When we're the Jets, we have pride in this team, we're going to do things the right way, and I'm so proud to be here and excited to be here, and this is going to turn around. But a lot of positivity. And then he got to the Combine last year, and then he was like, again, he was doing this Bill Parcells, Sean Payton cosplay. It was like, what is this? Is this actually who you actually are? I don't know. He seemed to put that away. And I don't know if maybe that was him. He says he's done a lot of self-reflecting, and we'll get to that in a second. But maybe that's him thinking back on this, saying, what was I doing? That's not me up there. Why am I being so difficult in media? Why am I trying to put on a facade for someone that I'm not? So he seems to put that aside. This is the guy Aaron Glenn I liked. But unfortunately, I also feel like it's very convenient, because I think that it just isn't how anybody who isn't scared of being fired by Woody Johnson would describe how Woody Johnson is. Like, he's just this guy that wants to just help, and he's not at all like meddling with ideas and meddling with the team affairs. That's just not how anybody has ever described it. Anybody who's worked around the Jets, not on in terms of like, maybe on the record they'll say good things, but in terms of guys that have left that building or people that have been around there, that's not how they talk about it. Here's Aaron Glenn. One of the things that's all centered around was, again, this idea that Woody Johnson had told Aaron Glenn, you need to coach the defense because I'm paying you to coach the defense. You're a defensive head coach. You should call the plays. I'm not hiring no defensive coordinator and paying X amount of money for a DC. Aaron Glenn, again, wanted to, explain why he decided to take back play calling. He says it is an aspect of coaching that is very important to him.
To me, play calling is my superpower, really. Doing it for 4 years in Detroit, and man, just look at the maturation of those 4 years of how we improved every year and how I improved as a play caller. I really miss doing that, and I think it's a huge part of helping us become the team that I see us become, the team that I knew Mooj see us become, the team that Woody sees us becoming.
It makes it weird. He says, like, I missed doing that. Then why did you come into this offseason not planning to do that? Where did this change come from? It still kind of is unclear to me. Like, it's something, it was so important to you and you say it's your superpower and you miss doing it, then why would you not even consider doing this until you met with Woody Johnson, allegedly? Or even if it wasn't a meeting, why would you randomly decide, actually, you know what, I have an epiphany, I actually need to call defensive plays. And especially when we went that far to the line with defensive coordinators that you were interviewing. It just seems, again, like I keep saying, there seems to be a lack of conviction. I don't think there's a lack of conviction with Aaron Glenn in terms of his determination of wanting to make the Jets a winner. But there seems to be a lack of conviction when it comes to how to make that happen. It just seems very scatterbrained. It seems very, like, all over the place. It's one day we got to do this. One day we got to do that. One day this is the problem. One day that's the problem. It's like, identify a problem, come up with a solution, attack that solution, and be committed to it. Don't just ram your head through a wall if it's not working, but like find a plan and commit to it and actually go through with it. When you are so scatterbrained, you're also, I don't know, it's this, maybe it's that, I gotta change this, I gotta change that, I feel this, actually I don't feel that. You look like you don't have control of the situation. You look like someone who isn't ready to lead. So, and I've said this before. I said this last season, during the season. I said, I hope he calls the plays next year. I was like, that's what he should do. Because to me, what I based it on was he's a terrible game manager. Like that aspect, like he said, I'm going to be the CEO coach. I'm going to observe the locker room, observe the vibes of the team. I'm going to control that aspect. And then during the games, I'm going to be doing game management and clock management and stuff. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. The vibes around the team were awful. They were a losing squad. And I'm sure the owner didn't help coming in and blowing up the quarterback midseason, but the vibes around the locker room seemed terrible. We've heard about Quentin Williams, how upset he was and how frustrated he was, how he wanted to get out of there. Sauce seemed to be thrilled to be out of there. So the locker room was terrible. The play on the field was terrible. Team wasn't prepared. That's something you're supposed to be in charge of. Within the actual games, when it came to situational football, they failed at this time and time again. Again, that's something that's on your plate as a CEO head coach. When it comes to discipline, something that you also said was going to be a huge thing. We were not going to be a team that gets penalized. And they were getting penalized left and right. They could not stop getting penalties. So my thing was, you sucked at the aspect that you wanted to try to do. I've seen you be a defensive play caller. Would I say you're super powered in doing it? I don't know if I go that far, but you're pretty good at it. Like, Aaron Glenn, he what he said was right. He improved as defensive coordinator every year in Detroit. The defenses got better as they got better players. And I thought he was really good. Like, I know, people say, oh, that was all a Ben Johnson creation of that team and their success. And look, the Lions offense was no joke. We all know that. But I think that Aaron Glenn doesn't get enough credit for how much that defense got stingy and got pesky and became a tough unit to play against. And sometimes it's not easy to just look at the numbers and say, well, they gave up X amount of yards and X amount of this. Well, when you're playing with an offense that's number one in the NFL and is running up and down the field on people, you're going to give up more yards and more touchdowns. I'm not worried about that. That was more of like, I've watched the Lions play defense, and I've watched them give teams problems. And I've also watched Aaron Glenn have to survive putting together that defense through insane amounts of injuries. So I think he's a good defensive coordinator. I think if he got fired tomorrow, he'd be hired as a defensive coordinator within the next week. So to me, super powered, I don't know. I don't know if I think he's Mike McDonald or someone like that, but I think he is a very good DC, and I felt like last year I was like, he should just call the plays. But my problem is, I'm sitting here on my ass watching the games and just making this declaration. He's the guy that's there. So you're the person that was there. You made this declaration that was not, or not declaration, but you made this assessment that that's not what I need to do. I need to hire Wink Martindale or hire someone else. To me, it's all right. Well, you don't think you need to do that, then I'm not going to push something on you that you don't think you can do. We already showed that you had too much on your plate last year. Adding defensive play calling might be a bad idea. So I think this thing is dead on arrival anyway. But I said, if you're going to go out on your own shield, man. But I understand if you say, hey, I'm still trying to learn how to be a head coach. I don't think trying to now be a defensive coordinator also is going to help me. So I got saying, all right, fine, you don't want to do it, then don't do it. But then to go back and say, oh, no, actually it's my superpower. It's like, well, why didn't you do this last year? Why didn't you come into this offseason, say you're going to do this? And he mentioned how not calling the defense last year was indeed something he regretted.
I don't want to second guess that. And I will go back when I say mistakes that I've made. I'm not going to make that same mistake, and I feel like I need to do that when it comes to the team.
So yeah, so he said that was, he's not going to make that same mistake. Where when it came to evaluating what was going to happen and his love for calling defensive plays and how he thinks that's an asset to the team, he said he wasn't coming to an offseason and then make that same mistake and say, let's give that defense to somebody else, even if it was someone that's qualified as Wink Martindale. And then finally you may think, okay, well, now that you're the pseudo-defensive coordinator, what are you looking for in building this Jets defense?
It comes schematically who we're going to be. Man, we have a number of guys on defense that's going to help be able to build that. And that's the fun part about, building around these men, is building a defense that I think that that's going to actually put the players in position to be successful. And this is not my defense. This is going to be the New York Jets defense. And everybody on that side is going to be a huge part as far as building that. So I'm excited about that.
They got a lot of work to do. Because this Jet defense, I'm trying to think of the worst Jet defenses I remember. First year, Robert Saleh was pretty awful. They got good really fast, but the first year was rough. But this Jet defense might have been the worst Jet defense I've ever seen. They were awful. They could not stop anybody. So he says building around these players. I actually be curious who those players are. Like, who on this team is actually a guy who you expect to be a cornerstone of this Jet defense moving forward? Because Will McDonald, okay, he can rush the pass a little bit. Not great against the run, but okay, pass rusher, Will McDonald. Jermaine Johnson, I think showed signs towards the end of the year that maybe he was starting to get healthy, but I don't know. I think the jury's out on whether or not he's good. I'll be honest. I think we kind of were probably jumping out the window and giving him maybe a little too much praise the previous year about him coming in and being a monster. We never got to see it, unfortunately, because he got hurt. But his rookie year was pretty good, and I think we kind of said, oh, he's going to be a monster this upcoming year, and he was kind of, okay in his third year, and now he enters this year, and we'll see what he was. Last year was kind of like a get-back year, where there was some good signs from him, but I'm not convinced he's a star. And then good luck finding me someone else in that defense that is worth anything. Seems like Brandon Stevens is someone that's going to stay on the team. His play got better as the year went on, but I also don't know if so much of that was just the other corners were so terrible that you could pick on anybody, so nobody was looking to pick on him. But I'm not crazy about him. I thought he was terrible to start the season. Truly terrible. Is someone like Amik Robertson, someone they get from Detroit, who's going to be available in free agency? Do you pair those guys together as corners, right, and see if you get some? There's a lot of guys who actually could be coming over. Alex Anzalone, someone who also will be a free agent who could be available. I think he'd probably be a really good fit at linebacker. I know he's a little old. I think he's 32. So you're talking about you're probably getting, realistically, probably 1 or maybe at most 2 good years out of him. But what we're going to see and what we've heard from Darren Muji is this opportunity to have this very young roster that was definitely not NFL caliber, in my opinion, but a young roster that they can now, because of the cap room they have, fit in a lot of veterans, which is why I think that story about, this idea that if he has his way, he'd prefer to bring in someone like a McKee or a Davis Mills makes sense, because this team has so many needs to fill on definitely defense, but arguably both sides of the ball, but certainly defense. I think it would make sense to be like, I don't want to have to spend, like, if you're gonna sign someone like Malik Willis to start, probably cost you at least $25-30 million a year. That's someone that's on the low end, but that's what he would command as a starting quarterback. That's a lot of money they're eating out of your $80 million in cap space just to start, just coming off rip. You're just blowing $30 million. And for a team, again, with this many holes, they probably want to sign guys to big money at almost every spot on defense. They're going to, Quincy Williams is probably going to be gone, so they're going to need linebacker depth. They're going to need safety depth. They're going to need a second corner, maybe even a third. They're definitely someone in the slot. And then you're going to need, in the offense, probably another receiver and probably some offensive line depth. So they're going to need to spend that $80 million. So that's why, again, when you talk about Kyler Murray or someone like that, I'm like, I don't want to absorb $40 million in salary to bring this guy in when they have all these other holes. And I don't think Kyler Murray really ups the ante on their ceiling. The Tanner McKee thing is fascinating. Because Tanner McKee is obviously not somebody that's played a ton. But obviously Frank Reich does have ties to Philadelphia. He's very, very close to Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni considers him his mentor in the NFL. So you have Bill Musgrave, who is who's the new QB coach. He coached obviously at Cal in the same conference where Tanner McKee was at Stanford, who was lighting it up when he was there. So maybe there's an overlap that makes sense. I'm reading this from the Bleeding Green Nation. Shout out to them. They kind of put those ties together and where Tanner McKee could fit in as an option for the Jets at quarterback. At this point, again, I'm almost willing to be open to almost anything. And there's a part of me that kind of wonders, man, if you're the Eagles, do you want to just give up on Tanner McKee like that? Like, it seems like I'm not saying that someone like Jalen Hurts should be on the hot seat, but it seems like the Eagles fans seem to really like this guy. So are you willing to just say, we're willing to move on from him? Tanner McKee in the last game, he wasn't great, 21 for 40, but he did throw 240 yards in that game. He did start. He played well in the preseason, I think, which caught some eyeballs. Last year, at the end of the year, when he played against the Giants, he played much better in the season finale in 2024. He threw for 269 yards and 2 touchdowns in a win. So not a huge sample size. It wasn't like he was playing with all the starters. So he's playing with other backup kind of guys too, and he played pretty well. So those are apparently reportedly the names you can expect when it comes to the Jets. But that's everything that's happening in Jets land. One guy that you'll have to pay attention to if you are following the Jets is what's happening in Atlanta, because we learned today that Falcons are expected to release quarterback Kirk Cousins on March 11th when the new league year officially begins. So Cousins, who obviously is currently still under contract with the Falcons, he signed that huge deal a couple years ago coming off the Achilles tear in Minnesota to become the Falcons quarterback. He then, of course, was very upset when he learned that they were drafting Michael Penix to be their quarterback of the future. He lost his job in his first year in Atlanta. He did actually come back and play last year for the Falcons because Penix tore his ACL again, and Cousins had to play. Cousins actually ended up playing okay. He was 5-3 as a starter, so they won. So it wasn't like they were winning games. It's down the stretch. I always think sometimes judging how teams play down the stretch in a season that's lost can be a little bit fool's gold, but they did end the season on a winning streak. Again, he did finish 5-3 on the season, finishing the year as a starter for the Falcons. Numbers weren't all that super impressive, but he was good enough to win. 10 touchdowns, 5 picks in 8 starts. So Cousins now is going to be a free agent. There was questions whether they would trade him. There was no way anybody was taking that contract. And there was questions whether or not the Falcons would just bring it back one more year and say, hey, we'll come back with this one more year and see if you can be the backup or see if you can start if Penix isn't ready to go. The Falcons are officially just completely moving off from Cousins from this standpoint. So it leaves now the table open for where he may want to go. The spot that makes the most sense is quite obvious to me, and that is Minnesota. Because the Vikings, if they aren't concerned about J.J. McCarthy, they should be. Because 9 was an up and down experience. And it wasn't like it was all terrible, but sometimes you just watch a quarterback and you just say, oh yeah, he's got it. Like, even if it's not like, not everything is perfect, because sometimes, especially these young quarterbacks playing on bad teams, bad offensive lines, they're still learning, right? So they'll make some mistakes. Like, you watched Cam Ward last year, and there were times where he looked terrible. He's a rookie quarterback. Sometimes he looked awful. But you watch him play for the most part, you say, okay, there's something there. Will it work out with this team? Who knows? NFL quarterbacks are a complete crapshoot. Sending them to the worst places in the league, expect them to thrive, isn't probably the best way to develop quarterbacks, especially playing them right away. But he's got a hell of an arm. He can definitely escape a sack here and there and make some great throws. The physical tools are there. You watch J.J. McCarthy play with I don't know what better offensive line. The Vikings have continued to have offensive line issues, but a better team. Definitely a better receiving core and better running back room. And you watch J.J. McCarthy play, you're just like, is this guy an NFL starter? Like, he's got a strong arm. He can definitely throw it through, a tight window here and there, but accuracy's all over the place. Doesn't seem to be able to read defenses. He just looks very, very average. To be honest, I hate to say this. He reminds me of Zach Wilson. Like, I remember watching Zach Wilson play with the Jets in his rookie year and his second year. And watching him at times, okay, oh, that's a nice throw. Okay, he zipped it in there. Like, he's got the physical arm and stuff. But, like, you watch him consistently enough, and he's like, oh, my God, this guy's wide open. How do you miss that throw? How do you not see that defender? You just threw that ball up. Like, what's going on? Like, and he looks lost. That's, to me, what J.J. McCarthy looked like for too often. And then you combine that he's also now becoming more and more of an injury risk because he had injury issues last year as well. To me, if I'm the Vikings, I don't know, like, if you're in the thing of, like, hey, let's pull the chute completely and try to go after a bigger name quarterback. We can talk about C.J. Stroud, who's not on the trade block apparently now. But I do think that, man, you have to bring in a real veteran to play next year. Like, that Carson Wentz thing they did by bringing him in at the very last second and then throwing him out there, they can't do that again. That was a poor job by their entire front office. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, of course, was fired. Front office, coaching staff team just approached the quarterback situation in a terrible way. Did not make sense to move the way it did, knowing that 9 was not ready to play. So I don't think they're going to make that same mistake again because this is a team that definitely has the horses to potentially be a threat in the NFC. The defense is still awesome. They still got Grenard. They still have a great defensive backfield. Byron Murphy's a stud, and they got a great defensive coordinator in Brian Flores. And we know the offense. Can Jordan Addison stay out of the police blotter is a whole other question. But when he's on the field, and him and Justin Jefferson at wide receiver, they're cooking with gas on that squad, on that side of the ball. They got the horses. The question becomes, do you have the quarterback that can make this thing viable? And J.J. McCarthy was so far away from being ready to play that he gave them no shot to win. The Vikings probably should have been in the playoff mix last year, and they couldn't with that guy playing quarterback. And when they benched him because he got hurt, they had no one else around to be viable for them to still compete. Kirk Cousins knows that offense. Kirk Cousins is comfortable playing indoors. He knows Justin Jefferson well. Like, I think that seems to be like a perfect fit, is to drop him in Minnesota. The question with Cousins is, that's a job that, this is where it gets interesting. I assume is not open. Like, I would assume that they're going to come into next year and it's going to be J.J. McCarthy's job still, because they want to see if they actually have something in this guy. It may be an offseason of learning the system, learning the NFL, and coming in more confident next year. Maybe he gets better. But I would assume this is an open job, whether it should be or not. It should be not an open job. Sorry, this is a job that is filled. Do you want to take the risk of going to Minnesota and never actually seeing the field? This is just my evaluation, my couch evaluation. I would tell Kirk Cousins, you're going to find a way on the field one way or another if you go to Minnesota. No one's wishing J.J. McCarthy gets hurt at all, but he has shown that he can get hurt. He's been injury prone since he got to the NFL. So they have an injury prone starting quarterback who seemed extremely overwhelmed for a team that is kind of a win now team. Like, it's not like this. They're young-ish, but it's not like, oh, we can just waste 3-4 years of these guys' primes and waiting for this guy to get good. Like, there is an expectation that they are a playoff caliber team. I would tell him, go there, say you'll quote unquote be QB2, and then wait for this guy to, if he blows up, you'll have to go out there and play. He might not even blow up. He may be good, but then he may get hurt and he may play. Like, he's shown that if you're the backup for J.J. McCarthy, you're going to get time. Ask Sam Darnold. Ask the guys that had to play last year. Carson Wentz. Like, you're going to get out there. So if I was him, if I was advising him, I'd tell him, go to Minnesota, take whatever $1 million, $2 million contract they're going to give you, and you could resurrect your career there. It's possible. I wasn't that high on Kirk Cousins last year. I didn't think he looked good. I watched a lot of those games. His best game was against the Bucs. That was definitely the best game, the comeback win, and he definitely seemed to turn back the clock a little bit there. But overall, he's never been that, like, physically impressive. So I kind of have to take that away. Like, I'm not going to see these, like, wow throws or wow plays from him. That's not how he plays quarterback. He's more of like an efficiency guy. He's more like he makes the throws that are there, and he runs an offense, and he knows where to deliver the ball. And maybe that was just a bad fit with Atlanta, but there's just nothing was spectacular about him when I watched him play. So when it comes to, like, oh, should the Jets look at him? Like, he's the one of the guys that's very low on my totem pole for the Jets. If they took him, I mean, I think most of these guys would be better than Justin Fields. But him playing on that terrible MetLife field with all the injuries he's had, and offensive line's okay. I don't know if the offensive line is as much an issue as it's been in recent years. It's still not a top-end offensive line. It's improving, but it's probably more towards the below average, middle of the pack, probably, I would say, in terms of offensive line. In terms of pass blocking, I would say. Run blocking, I think they're a little better than that. But that team, outdoors, cold weather. I know he played for the Vikings, but you play at least, 9 to 10 games a year in a dome? Because you have your 8 to 9 home games every year, and then you have the Detroit Lions game, which is in a dome. So it's cold weather, but you really only got to worry about 2 games. There are no domes in the AFC East. Your home games are all going to be in cold weather when the Jets play in November and December. If you play in Foxborough, that's going to be freezing. If you play in Buffalo, that's going to be freezing. And with the way the NFL works, the way the scheduling works, it's rare you're able to skirt those December trips to Buffalo or to New England. They bake them in the schedule because they want to have the Jets playing in those cold weather games because they're good environments. So, that's like a little, it's not insider reach, just you could look at the history of scheduling. That's usually how it works. Somehow the Dolphins find themselves having to play in some ridiculously cold place late in the season. You're like, couldn't this game just have been scheduled in September, considering all their home games are warm weather? No, the NFL does that on purpose. They want to show you these storylines. They want to present these storylines right to you. It's literally put on a platter. So if you're bringing in Kirk Cousins, you're a Jets fan, he's not going to avoid Foxborough in the cold, in my opinion. He's not going to avoid Buffalo in the cold, in my opinion. And he's obviously not going to avoid the home games. So in those environments, do I think Kirk Cousins is someone that's going to be able to perform at a high level? I would think probably not. So I'm not that keen on him. I prefer going after somebody who's a little younger, a little more healthy, a little more durable, a little more physical traits that would translate. It's why, in theory, I thought Justin Fields was a good fit. Because if he can't throw the ball, at least he can run in the snow. Right? Like, that's the thought process. And he has better physical traits. Problem is he's not good at quarterback. So that was the issue with Justin Fields and bringing him in. So I like Minnesota. I think Miami could be another option. Again, still AFC East, but at least 8 of your 9 home games are in Miami. So you're worried warm weather is going to be most of the games still. You got a couple of cold games potentially in New York, in Buffalo, in Foxborough, but otherwise you're going to be fine. So I think number 1, I'll tell Minnesota. Number 2, probably Miami. This is a rebuilding situation, but this is a beggars can't be choosers situation. The other third spot would be Arizona. Arizona actually might be 2. I might flip that. Arizona is like a sneaky, interesting QB job. I'm very curious if they move on from Kyler Murray, like who gets that spot, and can they have any modicum of success? Because the actual team is okay. I know it doesn't look like it. They're 3-14, but you look at the roster, you see arguably the best tight end in the NFL, in Trey McBride. Marvin Harrison Jr., I know it's been a bit of a disappointment, but he showed some flashes that he could play a little bit. You know, they had trouble running the ball in the past, but they've been able to run the ball in previous years. They running the ball last year when Connor got hurt. They were dead on arrival. But again, warm weather, indoors. Players have gone to Arizona and have been able to extend their careers. It kind of feels like maybe that's a Kirk Cousins spot where maybe could he be kind of like a Kurt Warner type and go there and surprise people, play well because he's in a controlled environment and a lot of warm weather in a comfortable situation. Problem is this NFC West is not the NFC West that Kurt Warner joined. Kurt Warner was playing against like Alex Smith when he was like terrible with the 49ers and playing, the Seahawks with Matt Hasselbeck, was good but kind of towards the end. And who else? And then the Rams. Oh, forget about the Rams. They were a joke at that point in time. That was that might have been Jeff Fisher 8-8 every year, or that probably is around that time. So that was a division that was waiting to be taken by somebody. And then finally Kurt Warner came in and he had some very good years there. To me, I like the Minnesota fit because the Minnesota fit actually reminds me a lot of when Kurt Warner went to Arizona. Because a lot of people don't remember how that went down. He went to Arizona. He was a pure backup. Matt Leinart was a starting quarterback. And the expectation was Matt Leinart was going to remain the starting quarterback. But Matt Leinart, rookie year, looked kind of shaky. And then second year, looked terrible. Awful. He clearly showed that he was not going to be able to succeed in the NFL, at least not in that environment. So they benched him because they had no choice. Because it's like, how many years are we going to keep tanking? Like, we got to try to win with somebody. So they threw Kurt Warner in there with low expectations. But Kurt Warner's got Anquan Bolden. He's got Larry Fitzgerald. And he still got that quick release. And he is just slinging the ball everywhere, left and right. It's like, whoa. I didn't know he still had this. We saw him play okay with the Giants. But again, that's an outdoor team. He didn't have to deal with cold weather. He got benched too early. But outdoor team, playing on grass. He was good. He should have kept his job. If Eli Manning was there, he would have kept his job. And maybe the Giants would have stuck into the playoffs. He was playing that well. But, seeing the concussions he's had, the injuries he's had, I don't think anybody had high expectations of him going to Arizona. He was expected to be a pure backup. They threw him out there, and all of a sudden, again, ball's coming out. He's like, whoa, okay, they're cooking with something special here. And they go on that magical run. They go to a Super Bowl. He then would take them to another playoff appearance as well. They won their division. And he had that classic against Aaron Rodgers where they had that shootout that happened in the wild card round. And then next week with Bounty Gate full in effect, he didn't get knocked out of the game, but they tried to knock him out of the game playing against the Saints on their run to the Super Bowl. But Kurt Warner did his thing, and he went to a spot where it wasn't like it was guaranteed he was ever going to play. It was very similar to me to J.J. McCarthy. A little different because we actually thought Matt Leinart was good. We thought he was good even in college. And we thought he'd be good in the NFL. We thought the Cardinals got a steal drafting him. I think they drafted him at either 9 or 10. We're like, oh man, this guy won a Heisman Trophy. He won 2 national championships. This is child's play taking a quarterback this accomplished this late in the first round. It would seem like it was a coup that they got him where they got him. Even after the first year, it was like, it wasn't that great. But he's a rookie. Again, I don't think people were like, oh, we're completely out on Matt Leinart. It was definitely not the greatest. But we're like, okay, again, we didn't think Kurt Warner was going to take his job, but he played so poorly. And I don't want to I'm not trying to diss Matt Leinart. He's a legend, right, in terms of the college game. But NFL-wise, he just played so poorly, they had no choice but to bench him. It's like, we can't go back to him. I want to say it was a Monday night game against the 49ers that really was like the turning point, I wouldn't say he like really turned the ball over and had a ton of problems. They were like, all right, we got to make the switch. And I'm looking at his record now. Yeah, they were 3-2. Like, they were playing okay, but he was just so average, and then he particularly took a bad turn in that game that they were like, yeah, we gotta make the switch. We gotta just put anybody else out there. And Kurt Warner went out there, he did his thing. So if I was advising Cousins, man, I'd be like, go to Minnesota, agree to quote unquote be the backup. Trust me, you will probably play, because this is a quarterback that's extremely embattled and hasn't really shown that he is capable of actually taking over and keeping this job. So go in there, win the job, or be the backup, and then get your opportunity, and then go in there and thrive. Because they're going to go to you quick. They can't afford to have another completely lost season. That's what it was for the Vikings last year. So Cousins becomes a free agent. Do you want your team to sign Kirk Cousins? Is there anybody in the chat that's rooting for a team that needs a quarterback? Do you guys want Kirk Cousins? Hit me up in the chat. Shout out to the folks watching me multiple locations, streaming live currently on YouTube New Generation Media. If you're on YouTube, we appreciate you. Plus, I really appreciate it if you can give a like to this video, give us a thumbs up. That helps us. Comment in the comment section, whether it's before the video or after the video, not in the live chat, but just in the comment section itself. That also helps. And subscribe to the channel. New Generation Media is where you'll find us on YouTube. That's where we're streaming live currently. Also streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. Be sure to follow me on X, EJ_Stewart. And streaming live on Instagram, IG Live. Action, EJ, of course, we podcast these episodes. Earlier this morning, didn't go up. It'll go up after this show. Make sure you also hit up our podcast channel. Search New Generation Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn. All of them have New Generation Media. New Generation Podcast Network, I'm sorry. So if you want to find these episodes, just search New Generation Podcast Network. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can get these episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights, along with all the other episodes we produce for New Generation Media. As I said yesterday, we did a Hero Talk episode over the weekend. My brothers did an Imperial Broadcast episode recently, so there's plenty of new content out there. So check out our podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network is where you're searched to get that. Let's talk about the Texans and where they're at. So Nick Caserio is their general manager, and he is fed up with conversations about their quarterback, C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud had a nightmarish postseason. He had 7 turnovers, 4 interceptions in the last game, all in the first half against the New England Patriots in their exit from the postseason. He was terrible. He was absolutely terrible against the Steelers, terrible against the Texans, and in some ways, like, Aaron Rodgers' career may be being over, and we thought it was, but now it seems like it's not. But that kind of overshadowed, and the Texans winning, of course, kind of overshadowed that, hey, man, did you guys just see that C.J. Stroud looks like he can't play football anymore? Like, he looks like he might actually be terrible at quarterback. I know this is a guy we thought was going to be a future star, maybe one of the faces of the NFL, but the regression is real with this guy at this point in time. We kind of overlooked that until we got to the next game, which is why, again, when we were picking games, I said, I don't really love this Patriots team, but the C.J. Stroud I saw has no chance to win in Foxborough. And he was even worse when he got to Foxborough. 4 interceptions again in the first half. So it led to real questions because the Texans have a serious defense. For my money, I know the Seahawks just won a Super Bowl basically on defense. I think the Texans have the best defense in the NFL. I think in terms of their talent on the front line, linebacker, and in the secondary, I would take them over everybody. Their defense is absolutely phenomenal. The problem has been the offense isn't close to where the defense is. So for a team that has a Super Bowl ready defense, do they have a quarterback that's ready? Do they have an overall offense that's ready? It doesn't feel like that's the case. Nick Halley's their offensive coordinator. He came in with a huge praise because people were excited coming from the Rams. And it didn't seem like there was all that much synergy between him and Stroud or him and the entire offense, really. This was after everybody played Bobby Slowick for all the issues the Texans had the previous year. Now Stroud enters year 4, and there's questions about, hey, like, you have a Super Bowl caliber team. Should they be looking to upgrade at quarterback? Like, is this something that they're going to continue to move forward with C.J. Stroud after what we saw in the postseason? Nick Caserio made it very clear that he finds these rumors to be utterly ridiculous.
It's moronic. Like, we're not trading a guy. He's our quarterback. So he's going to be playing quarterback for the Houston Texans in 2026. So anything beyond that, I mean, again, like, that's your world. You guys can speculate on that, but we're not trading CJ Stroud.
So it might be a little low there, but basically he started saying that's moronic. And he said CJ Stroud's going to be our quarterback. He said if you want to talk about anything beyond this year, that's for you guys to speculate, but we're not trading him. So pretty strong. The only aspect that wasn't as strong was, is he the quarterback of the future? He kind of invited that. I don't know why he offered that, because otherwise we'd just be saying, oh, let's put this away. That's the only part of the answer I say, He said, beyond that, that's what you guys speculate. I'm like, you drafted the number 2 in the draft. Why would he not be your quarterback beyond next season? Why wouldn't you just say, we plan for him to be our quarterback for the foreseeable future? That tells me, okay, this is definitely a make or break year for CJ Stroud. Coming into this year, does it make sense to trade him? I think he's saying no. And he's probably right, only because you trade CJ Stroud, you got to have an option that's out there that is clearly a upgrade. And this is a tough QB field. I don't know if there's an obvious upgrade. I think if you're getting an upgrade, it's going to be somebody who, on paper, doesn't look like one. If you want to convince me that Mac Jones actually is better than CJ Stroud, you might be able to convince me. I wasn't a Mac Jones guy, but he played really well last year, and CJ Stroud did not for most of the season. Sure, but that, on paper, considering Mac Jones lost his job in New England, who he's been for his career, that would seem like you're taking a leap. You're going to tell me Malik Willis is better than CJ Stroud. Again, I didn't like what I saw from Stroud, but now, again, I'm taking a leap with something that I don't know. Like, everything's a leap of faith. You're going to tell me Kirk Cousins or someone else in this offense with this defense that they would be better? There's no obvious answer. I think when you're a team like the Texans, it's not like you don't have nothing to lose. Like, you do have something to lose. It's not like, oh, we can just, like the Jets, they can say, oh, well, Kirk Cousins, whatever. We can just do whatever. There's really nothing to lose. We're the worst team in the NFL. The Texans know, like, they're that close to winning a championship. They're 2 games away from being in the Super Bowl. So there's a lot to lose. You can't just willy-nilly be like, oh, yeah, we're just going to throw our quarterback in the garbage and just find some other guy and figure it. Like, it's not that simple. It doesn't mean that CJ Stroud's any good. He might be terrible. But just in terms of team building and how you got to approach the situation, you got to be smart. I also assume with the salary cap situation, you're trading him, you're eating all this money. So why are you eating money on a guy that was a rookie of the year? He may also be good. There also is that fact that maybe whatever he's going through, whatever struggles he's having, progression is not linear, and that he can get back to playing at a high level. We saw that with Jared Goff. Jared Goff was a star after a rough rookie year. He became a star for the Rams. Then he fell out of favor and struggled down the stretch, lost his job, then goes to the Lions, and after a rough first year of Detroit, turns back into a star again. So it's not to say that I think CJ Stroud is cooked completely, but the guy that we saw last year is definitely not capable of winning a Super Bowl, even with a defense that's that great. And I'm not even talking about those terrible playoff games he had, though I would argue that the guy you saw in the regular season is always probably going to get exposed in the playoffs. But even if he played how he played in the regular season, I still am not sure that that guy's good enough to win a Super Bowl. There were a lot of games last year where the Texans are winning, 16-9, 10-3, games that with that kind of defense and that pass rush, you should be able to salt away easy as long as your offense is somewhat functional. Just somewhat functional. Your passing game is somewhat functional. You should be able to salt these games away because of how well the defense is playing, how much they're taking the ball away, giving you short fields. And there were all these wins last year. I'm just rattling them off. This was down the stretch when they won all these games in a row before entering the playoffs. Because they started the year miserable, and then they went on a crazy hot streak where they won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They won 10 out of their last 11 games. Here are the totals of these wins. I know Stroud was hurt for some of these games, but Niners, you win 26-15. Jaguars, okay, 36-29. He scored some points there. Titans, 16-13. Bills, 23-19. Colts, 20-16. Chiefs, 20-10. Cardinals, okay, 40-20. Okay, you got some points up there. Raiders, 23-21. There was a pick six in that game. I remember that game. Chargers 20-16, and then the last game of the season, which was kind of a throwaway, Colts 38-30. Like, you're winning all these games where your defense is giving up 10, 15, 16 points, and you're only able to throw up 20 points, 23 points. And again, Mills played in some of those games, and then Stroud eventually came back. And they still were very ordinary. So I do think there's reason to have. It's not moronic to think that maybe the Texans can't win a Super Bowl with C.J. Stroud. That's not moronic. That's just watching the team play. Like, I watched that game on Monday Night Football when the Texans beat the Chiefs. And C.J. Stroud was out there, and he was 15 for 31, and they scored 20 points. In a game with Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs' offense was completely, utterly zipped up. They turned the ball over 3 times, and it was kind of the death knell for the Chiefs' season at that point in time. It wasn't anything that had anything to do with C.J. Stroud, as someone who watched that game. The Texans handed that game to him on a platter. So you can say the same thing with the Colts game when they won 20-16 on the road, where Stroud is 22 for 35 and he has a pick, and they only scored 20 points. But you know what? The defense only gave up 16. Now, for me, with the Texans, okay, if C.J. Stroud's not going to be traded this year, which I can understand, what are you doing to actually fix the team, though? Because it's not just all on C.J. Stroud as far as the issues that they have. Because they have a running game that maybe it was fool's gold what Woody Marks and Nick Chubb were able to do against the Steelers because they ran the ball really well against them. But when they went up against Patriots, there was nothing. And that's been the Texans' running game pretty much since C.J. Stroud got there. They have not figured out the running game at all. So are you going to address this in the draft? Are they a team that maybe takes a swing? I don't know if Jeremiah Love's going to be where they're drafted. But do you take a running back in the late first round or early second round? Do you try to make a swing for someone like Kenneth Walker if he does become available? And we know he's not going to get franchise tag, so he will be a free agent. They desperately got to give this guy some help when it comes to the running game. They can't have. I think maybe the rookie season was fool's gold. I don't know if it was fool's gold for C.J. Stroud, but it seems like it was. But definitely was fool's gold for the Texans. And then I think they thought, okay, we can just get by kind of just having any kind of run-of-the-mill running game, or even arguably the worst running game in the NFL. But we have a special quarterback, and he's going to be able to overcome a terrible running game. That was fool's gold, that he was able to do that his first year. He's not able to do that. He's not able to overcome not having a running game. So you're going to have to, the offensive line has to be reshaped in a major way, and they're going to have to get some real running backs in there next year. You can't do the Nick Chubb thing again. Maybe Woody Marks can be in there with like a tandem with somebody else, but they need some real pop in the backfield. So that would be my big thing for the Texans, is how you're addressing the running game. Because if you're going to say trading C.J. Stroud were moronic, I think thinking that you're going to win a Super Bowl with how they've approached their offense the last few years, you could argue is also moronic if you think you're going to win a Super Bowl this year doing that again. This is a big year for C.J. Stroud. Again, I'm taking into account. Sometimes it's not about what was said, but what was said in between the lines. And that little remark about, what did he kind of say by saying, that's for you guys to speculate, kind of making it as if this is something that you guys are bringing up that's not a big deal. No, it's a big deal. Is he the quarterback beyond next year? That's not a stupid question or not a stupid thought at all. I'm not even I'm not even getting after Nick Cassera. I'm just saying, realistically, no, that's. If you're a Texans fan, I guarantee all of them are I don't know if this guy is our franchise quarterback. Unless you're just a blind, I'm a C.J. Stroud stan guy, which there are fans in every fan base like that. But a lot of Texans fans right now, I know for a fact they're we don't know if that guy's our starting quarterback. I know because they were all on social media when he was throwing all those picks left and right against the Patriots. And when they were struggling against the Steelers. Where you legitimately I don't know if this guy is our guy anymore. So, just because of circumstance, salary, and where the Texans are, this year it doesn't really make sense to trade him. If he has another year like next year where they go to the playoffs and he puts up a poo-poo platter performance like he did in those 2 games, I don't think he's going to be the quarterback. I think that was Nick Caserio making it clear that we are evaluating C.J. Stroud this year. Because the defense is there, man. And there's only so many more years you can have a defense to keep them together because of the way the modern NFL is with the free agency and everything. So it's only a matter of time before you're going to start losing guys or making some tough decisions. You got to strike while the iron is hot with this defense. And you got a short window with them. Last thing before we get out of here, man. I want to talk about some wrestling, as they say. This is the WWE, so this is more, wrestling. This is actually sports entertainment. If I was talking about AEW, maybe I could convince him, maybe I can make a case that that's wrestling. But when you talk about WWE. Shout out to WWE though. I have some friends over there, or some people I've gotten to know, and they're pretty cool. But no, this is professional sports entertainment. I want you guys to hear this from AJ Styles. So AJ Styles was honored last night by Undertaker, who came out to announce that he was going to be going to the WWE Hall of Fame. It seems like last night's Raw wasn't the greatest. There also was a pretty serious injury. Much love and speedy recovery to Bronson Reed, who was injured last night. He tore his bicep, so he's going to be out, obviously, for a considerable amount of time. He's definitely going to be out for WrestleMania. He was supposed to be in the Elimination Chamber match coming up on Saturday. He was wrestling in a match that was supposed to be a qualifier. The dirt sheets say that he was supposed to win. Who, again, that's all we have. Who knows if it's true or not? But that's what they're saying, that he was supposed to win the match, and he was supposed to be in the Elimination Chamber, which would have made sense because one of the storylines they've been pushing in WWE has been that this masked man who keeps curb stomping people, who is this guy behind the mask? It seems like it's maybe Seth Rollins, but it's because it seems so obvious, it makes you wonder maybe they're setting up something different. So this has been a big storyline that they've been trying to work through for several weeks now. And you have Braun Breaker. He gets injured with the core muscle injury, and he's out indefinitely. And now you have Bronson Reed tear his bicep. So the division as a whole is just, I don't know what you do with the division at this point. The two big attractions aren't there. Seth Rollins is not obviously part of them. Now you have Logan Paul and Austin Theory. Are they a tag team now? Like, what do you do with them? I don't know. So it wasn't the greatest episode of Raw, it seemed like, but there was a big moment with AJ Styles in Atlanta, which is where he kind of, he's a Georgia boy. He puts down his roots. So it's kind of like a hometown show. He returns to, be honored and talk about his retirement. And then Undertaker announces that he will be a member of the Hall of Fame. I think it's really cool that Undertaker has kind of become like what we see with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, where it's not one person, but somebody will show up outside of Randy Moss's house and be like Chris Carter or something like that. Like some other Hall of Famer will be the person to they'll be there with camera crews and stuff to congratulate them and say, hey, I want to let you know you're going to be inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it's always a cool moment every time it happens. Baseball does it too, where they'll get a phone call. They do a phone call typically. And they'll tape the guy the day he's supposed to get the call. You see the call, you see the emotions. It's great. WWE's made this thing kind of neat. It used to be just a press release, or they just announced it on Raw. Hulk Hogan going to the Hall of Fame or whatever. Now they've kind of put more into the announcement, surprise into the announcement, and they're actually creating these great moments for these talents. So AJ Styles gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, or he will be. As I said earlier in the show, well, this first show today. I think it was our first show today I said it. I kind of feel like the fact that they're really pushing that this is the end of AJ Styles in ring stuff. Whenever he's asked about it, he seems to kind of couch it a little bit. But it's like they really want to put to bed that this is the end of his career. Don't follow him doing anything else after this. He's definitely retired, guys. Don't worry about anything he may do after this. His career is over. The way they're pushing it feels like they're definitely trying to kneecap any opportunity for him to actually go and wrestle somewhere else if he does indeed want to do that. Because with wrestling, you never actually retire. Ric Flair is like 70-something. He's apparently still talking about coming back to wrestle, which is insane. That's just the life of a wrestler. So he has the moment. It's a great moment. But on Raw Recap, in a social media video that was posted, he was asked a question about why did you decide to retire at the Royal Rumble instead of WrestleMania, considering WrestleMania is the grandest stage of them all, as they say in wrestling. AJ Styles' answer on a WWE platform. This is not on some podcast. He's not talking to shout out to O'Shea Jackson and TJ Jefferson. We played their sound with John Cena last week. He's not talking to somebody that's not officially affiliated with WWE. This is on WWE's platform. This is what he said about WrestleMania and why he decided to retire at the Royal Rumble instead.
It was coming back from an injury to WrestleMania, to a match that didn't, to me, have much build. And WrestleMania, listen, I'm sorry to say, used to be the most prestigious PLE or pay-per-view, whatever you want to call it. But to me, it's kind of lost its luster a little bit But as far as the Royal Rumble, that's special to me because that's where I made my debut. So to be able to end where I started, it's poetic.
Yeah, AJ, sure, it's poetic to end where you started, and it's cool that you have that story that he was someone that debuted at the Royal Rumble. I think for the aughts, that was probably one of the biggest Royal Rumble entrances of that generation, and it was great. I remember that's one of those things I will remember watching and having chills. Like the music hits you, like, ooh, this music. First of all, this music's dope. Like, what is this? This is interesting. And then the P1 shows up, and he shows up, flips the hood, and he's out. It's like, yo, number 3, AJ Styles, means AJ Styles is not going to just be thrown in at the end of the match number 30. Like, we're going to see him actually scrap and be a part of this match in a major way. And he's with Roman Reigns. Like, it was a great moment. Great moment. So, okay. Yeah, I get that, Royal Rumble is important to you, and it's a big event. I always say that it actually is my favorite pay-per-view, even more than WrestleMania. But to be on a WWE platform and say that its highest grossing, most important event has lost its luster feels like one of two things. Either something got lost in translation in terms of like where he was saying this to, or the fact that this was not supposed to probably be posted. I can't imagine on a show where the internet conversation has been about how there's been low ticket sales and how the WWE is making kind of all these different moves than they typically have made in the past to try to get people to buy tickets for WrestleMania. They had a 25% off special a couple of weeks ago. They had now in Vegas, they're not allowing kind of watch parties at major casinos and major hotels and pool parties and things like that. Like typically what they do in Vegas for fights. They're not doing that because they want people to actually go to WrestleMania as opposed to going to, the MGM Grand to watch it at a pool party or whatever. Like, if all this is false and they're actually totally fine, they think WrestleMania is going to go great and there's no concerns, then they're doing a bad job of letting this be the narrative, because that is the narrative right now, that WrestleMania is kind of a mess. And right now, that's how it feels. Like, you have Reigns and Punk as a headliner, and the promo that we got a couple weeks ago was great. We played some of it here on the show. I think people are excited for that match. It feels like everything else feels like they're throwing stuff on the wall. It doesn't feel like creative is strong in any direction, which is, again, some of the stuff we're hearing from the dirt sheets and some of the stuff you're hearing from these reports from people that are getting info reportedly from WWE about what is creative differences that are happening behind the scenes. So I cannot imagine that WWE would want AJ Styles to say that WrestleMania has lost its luster on their platform unless they wanted him to, or there was a mistake. One of the let me try to break this down. If it was a mistake, then that's awful. It's awful that if some intern was like, and I won't say intern because they digital media people hate that, they're professionals, and I'm someone who's a digital media person, so. But if some digital media person, some professional, shot a video with AJ Styles saying that WrestleMania has lost its luster and thought it was smart to post it and make it a part of Raw recap, it seems very strange. It seems like that person probably don't want anyone to lose their job, but maybe they should be strongly reprimanded and be like, hey, we shouldn't put something out there that makes the company look bad. To say that our biggest event of the year that we're trying to get people to pay thousands of dollars to go see because we're charging Super Bowl ticket price kind of numbers for this, that it's lost its luster. So there's that, the honest mistake. There's two, what I've been saying, which is what I just said, that WWE's been feeling very heavy-handed, in my opinion, with how much they've pushed the fact that AJ Styles is never going to wrestle again. Triple H wanted to make that the well-known thing when he had his post-show thing they do on WWE. Netflix after or ESPN rather, after the pay-per-views, when AJ Styles again kind of was more couching it, well, never say never kind of, but I know I don't want to do this right now. I don't want to do it anymore. So this is how I feel right now. So that seemed weird. I was like, well, he didn't put his gloves in the ring. He did leave his gloves and vest in the ring this time around, to be clear, on Raw. And maybe they told him, listen, if you're showing back up again, you're not going to not put the gloves back on. You're gonna put this down because your contract is expiring and we don't want you to go anywhere. So maybe this is AJ seeing that and maybe feeling a way about it, and it's like, all right, y'all want to play around with my future money potentially. All right, let me talk about how WrestleMania is ass. let me do something that I know you guys are around. Like maybe he hasn't liked the messaging. That's the second thing. He's being petty, which would, I think, also maybe look to me and say, oh, is it possible he does go to Japan for a run or AEW for a run? Because now he's kind of on the way out taking shots at WWE, and we know particularly AEW would appreciate him disrespecting WrestleMania. And then there's a third thing, where we got worked with Seth Rollins and his injury that wasn't an actual injury. And WWE's been seemingly more willing to play with the crowd with what is kayfabe and what is not. Is this a long angle that we're not seeing? Because it's so weird. Part of me is like, even the video, like I played you the audio, the video is very weird. He's just standing there and it's just some random voice like, so, why did you make this decision? And then he then says this. It's like, and not saying it was a canned answer, but he obviously was prepared. It wasn't like he was talking to cuff. It wasn't like it was a podcast. Like, it was very much like, hey, I'm going to stand here, I have my phone, I'm going to ask you this question. So get ready to answer it. So he knew what was coming. Like, so part of me is like, it looks so staged. I'm just like, now what the angle is, I have no idea. It might not even involve AJ Styles. Could they use this AJ Styles sound and the conversation happening on the internet about people saying that WrestleMania is too expensive and therefore nobody wants to go and they made a terrible mistake sending it back to Las Vegas for a second year in a row? Could they be trying to use that to put stuff in the story? That, I kind of think, is probably the most likely scenario with this in terms of why he said this, because nothing else makes sense to me. Someone that is a professional in WWE thinking that it's smart to post a video of AJ Styles saying that WrestleMania has lost its luster is, to me, doesn't make any sense at all. And the whole, well, AJ Styles let me get back at WWE by saying something about WrestleMania, thinking that this person behind the camera or behind the phone is incompetent and will actually post it, again, seems like, I don't think he would think that deep about this. I can't see that being the case either. So if it is an angle, if we're going to play that game, what angle are they playing? Does AJ Styles end up actually having a match at WrestleMania? Again, I wonder if it's not so much about AJ Styles actually having a match or anything, as more so is it possible that they're going to use what the chatter is on the internet, was that WrestleMania is like dying and oh my god, like it's not as good as we thought it was going to be and they made a mistake and people aren't into it and all these different things. And you know, when WWE's at its best, they're smart. They can be smart in how they use negativity on the internet to then inform their stories and to bring that reality to their storylines. So this may be the beginning of that, where maybe they want the story of this build that's been kind of scattered and seemingly lacking focus to be like, okay, you guys think we lack focus? We think WrestleMania is going to be ruined? Let's play up this idea that WrestleMania is being ruined, and let's see where the storylines go with that. So, hey, AJ, you're not part of the roster. You have nothing to gain or lose here. Go out there. Like, it is not like it's Seth Rollins saying this or Roman Reigns saying this or CM Punk. Like, that comes with more criticism, more headlines, more like, whoa, that's someone that actually works for WWE saying that WrestleMania lost its luster. That's terrible. Here is a guy who technically does not work for WWE anymore. That's the whole point of this. So this is a perfect vessel for this guy to push a narrative that's already out there that we can now bring to our TV audience, or maybe more, it's not really TV because this was not on television, but more of our internet audience, and keep this thing bubbling, and we'll use that as part of our storyline. That's what I think is happening. But AJ Styles to say WrestleMania has lost its luster is crazy and weird. To if I'm just taking this, if I'm going to be a mark and just take this kayfabe and take this pure kayfabe as if like he's really saying this, or this is an actual shoot and I'm not being worked. I don't think WrestleMania has lost its luster. That I don't think that's the case. WrestleMania, I think, is still a major event. I think people still clamor to want to go. Every year WrestleMania happens, I always look up ways to see if I can go. Whether it's buying tickets, I've been to 2 where I bought tickets. I've been blessed enough to be able to work at one in Philadelphia. So I am someone who, that it's always going to be a big deal. Anybody in wrestling, I know they've had some issues. I think they have TKO and just made some interesting decisions, to put it lightly, with ticket sales and how they're pricing people out, arguably. But I think wrestling is still at a better stage in terms of interest where it is right now than it was 15 years ago. Definitely. Right now, they're in a little bit of a rough patch. They got to try to get out of this. But you had Roman make the comments about how creatively we're not doing what we need to do. Now you got AJ Styles saying, oh, we got, WrestleMania's lost its luster. This is a weird vibe happening with WWE right now. Because the Roman comments were interesting, because that is someone that does work in WWE. But that wasn't about, yes, he was kind of getting at creative, but he also kind of was more talking about not just creative, but also the roster. He did mention that Nick Khan's doing a great job. He's a good executive. And then just didn't say anything about Triple H. So again, it makes you kind of wonder if, like, he definitely was getting at Triple H as well. But again, is this part storyline of what's going on here? Now you have this, where AJ Styles is dumping on WrestleMania. This is the most important thing in WWE. This is literally the only thing more important to WWE than WrestleMania is the actual WWE title. Like those are the two most important things. Because the WWE title is what's going to sell, and whoever has it is most likely going to sell your biggest event, which is WrestleMania, where they're going to make the most money. So these are two of the most important things. And one of the most important things you have in your entire company, the guy that you just honored with the Hall of Fame minutes before, is like, one of the problems, the reason why he wanted to do with WrestleMania is kind of lost his luster. And it's like, okay, you bigged up the Royal Rumble, but the Royal Rumble doesn't sell out football stadiums. Not yet, at least. They can do baseball stadiums, which is what they've done. So they need people to show up at WrestleMania, man. Like, you saying it's lost its luster. Like, I don't know what that makes sense from a business standpoint. So either, to me, again, it's sabotage from AJ's situation, or it's maybe that we say, hey, put this out there. Let's see what the reaction is online, and maybe we could play with it a little bit. Another example when I wish I would have my guy Lucas Goldman, who I do my wrestling podcast with, talk about this, because he's always very smart about this stuff. I'm probably going to text him as soon as this show's over. That's going to do it, man. That's all I got, man. I want to thank you guys so much for checking out this edition of 40 Days, 40 Nights, Nights 32 and day 32 in the book. So we're plowing away, man. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I mean, not Pat, the run's not over, obviously, but I hope you guys have enjoyed this run that we've been on, man. It's been a lot of fun for me to do this. It's like mixed feelings to see that number go up and up and up, which to me, in my head, feels like it's dwindling down, even though it looks like it's a number that's increasing. I know once it gets to 40, that's the last day. But I look at that and I'm like, oh man, like, we're really nearing the end here. That's crazy. Like, part of me is like, whew, don't have to prepare 2 shows a day and wake up early to prepare for the first show in the morning. But it's been a fun ride for sure, and I hope you guys definitely enjoyed it. And I hope you guys stick with New Generation Media, because I'm really, like, I love the podcast episode we did on Sunday doing Hero Talk. It was good to be back in the saddle doing that again. Because I was doing this particular thing with 40 Days and 40 Nights, I'm kind of the spearhead. We're 3 co-hosts, but I kind of lead the conversation. I kind of lead everything with that. Shamari leads the Star Wars stuff. And so because I was doing this, I kind of, like, Hero Talk kind of was on a mini hiatus a little bit. We were pretty consistent doing it every week for a little while. And, Shamari kind of put it out there, hey, man, we should get back to doing this. And I said, yeah, you're right. And I'm kind of nearing the end of this. And I hope this is, again, the launching pad for what's a big year for New Generation Media. If you look back at all our stuff is tracked from our podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network, and also on our YouTube channel. You can see all the videos. We've been at this for 10 years plus, doing original content, doing original commentary on all different things. So we got, I think, a great team here. I love my brothers to death. They do a great job with the stuff that they contribute to this channel. And there's going to be more fun stuff on this channel once 40 Days and 40 Nights is up. I won't be doing 2 live stream shows for that, that's for damn sure. Because this is a haul. It's not like being in a coal mine or doing, real, like, blue-collar work. Like, I respect those people, obviously. But in terms of this media game, this is all that I do this twice a day. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. I hope you guys are having a lot of fun with it, because I certainly am as well. And we'll have more stuff to do tomorrow. Nick's playing tonight. I got to watch this Nick game. We'll probably talk about that game and whatever else we get into tomorrow. All right, guys. Thank y'all so much for watching this episode of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Be sure to follow me on X, EJ_Stewart. Follow me on Instagram, ActionEJ. Make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube, New Generation Media. And subscribe to the podcast channel. Search New Generation Podcast Network wherever you get your podcasts. Rod Ray saying, don't forget 24-hour marathon. No, that's not happening. Sorry, buddy. No 24-hour marathon. But we still got 7 more days of this, man. So 7 more days, or actually 8 more days, technically. 8 more days of fun. Let's see what we get into. I'm EJ Stewart. I'll see you guys in a little bit.